October 1st, 1968. A garbage collector in Elancourt, a small village outside Paris, made a discovery that would shake France to its core. Wrapped in a blood-stained mattress cover and dumped in a public landfill was the body of Stefan Markovic, a 31-year-old Serbian who worked as bodyguard and confidant to Alain Delon, France's biggest movie star. Stefan Markovic wasn't just any bodyguard. He was a former wrestler, a charming hustler, and, according to police files, a man who knew too many secrets about too many important people. The discovery of his body set off a chain of events that would drag Alain Delon into the most notorious criminal investigation in French history, expose a web of corruption that reached the office of the future president, and create a scandal so explosive that it's still talked about today. But to understand how Alain Delon ended up spending 35 hours in a police interrogation room accused of murder, we need to go back to where it all began. In 1967, Alain Delon was at the peak of his career. He was making Le Samouraï, the film that would cement his reputation as the coolest actor in European cinema. He was also living a lifestyle that attracted dangerous people. Through his Corsican connections, Alain had befriended François Marc-Antony, a known member of the Corsican mafia. Marc-Antony ran in circles where violence was common, money flowed freely, and secrets were currency. It was through Marc-Antony that Alain met Stefan Markovic. Stefan was different from the usual thugs in Marc-Antony's crew. He was educated, spoke multiple languages, and had an almost supernatural ability to charm his way into exclusive circles. Within months of arriving in Paris, Stefan had transformed himself from a small-time Belgrade street fighter into a fixture at the most exclusive parties in the city. Alain hired Stefan as his bodyguard, but their relationship quickly became much more complex. Stefan lived in Alain's house, traveled with him everywhere, and became privy to the most intimate details of the actor's life. But Stefan had a secret talent that would eventually get him killed. He was a blackmailer. Stefan had figured out that wealthy, powerful people would pay handsomely to keep their secrets private. He began organizing parties at Alain's house, parties that attracted politicians, celebrities, and wealthy businessmen. What the guests didn't know was that Stefan had installed hidden cameras throughout the house, especially in the bedrooms. Stefan would photograph compromising situations and then approach their victims with a simple proposition: pay or see your reputation destroyed in the newspapers. For months, this scheme worked perfectly. Stefan was making more money than he'd ever dreamed of, and his victims paid quietly rather than risk exposure. But Stefan made a fatal mistake. He got greedy, and he targeted the wrong person. In September 1968, Stefan acquired photographs that he believed would make him rich beyond his wildest dreams. The photos allegedly showed Claude Pompidou, wife of former Prime Minister Georges Pompidou, in compromising positions with another woman. Georges Pompidou was preparing to run for president of France. These photos, if released, would destroy not just his career, but his entire political future. Stefan began shopping these photos around to various newspapers and political opponents. He was asking for a fortune, and he made it clear that if he didn't get paid, the photos would become public. What Stefan didn't realize was that he had just signed his own death warrant. On September 22, 1968, Stefan was seen getting into a taxi on the Avenue de Messina in Paris. A middle-aged man was already in the cab. Stefan was never seen alive again. For over a week, nobody reported Stefan missing. Alain was shooting a film,
and assumed Stefan was handling business. Stefan's other associates thought he had gone underground while negotiating the sale of the photos. It wasn't until October 1st, when his body was discovered, that anyone realized Stefan Markovich was dead. The initial autopsy showed that Stefan had been killed by blows to the head and neck with a heavy object. But when police conducted a second autopsy after receiving an anonymous tip, they discovered something far more sinister. Stefan had actually been killed by a single bullet to the back of the neck, execution style. Someone had wanted Stefan Markovich dead badly enough to make it look like a random beating, when it was actually a professional assassination. The investigation began immediately, and within days, all roads led back to Alain Delon. Police discovered that Stefan had been living in Alain's house at the time of his death. They found evidence of the hidden cameras Stefan had been using for blackmail. Most damning of all, they found a letter that Stefan had written to his brother in Yugoslavia just weeks before his death. In that letter, Stefan had written, "If anything happens to me, address yourself to Alain Delon, to his wife Nathalie, and to his associate François Marc-Antony. They will know who is responsible." On January 8, 1969, police arrested François Marc-Antony and charged him with Stefan's murder. That same day, they brought Alain Delon in for questioning. What followed was one of the most intense interrogations in French criminal history. For 35 hours straight, over the course of 3 days, teams of detectives took turns questioning Alain about every aspect of their relationship with Stefan Markovich. They wanted to know about the parties, the blackmail scheme, the hidden cameras, and most importantly, what Alain knew about Stefan's death. The interrogation was brutal. French police in 1969 didn't have the same restrictions they have today. They could keep suspects for days without lawyers present, and they used psychological pressure that would be considered torture by modern standards. Detective Inspector Jean Cabret, who led the interrogation, later described it as the most difficult case of my career. He said Alain was like a sphinx, impossible to read, impossible to break. For the first 12 hours, Alain maintained his innocence with almost superhuman calm. He answered questions politely, but revealed nothing useful. He claimed to know nothing about Stefan's blackmail activities, nothing about hidden cameras, and nothing about any threats against Stefan's life. But as the hours wore on, and as the questions became more specific and more accusatory, something began to change.
On the second day of interrogation, Detective Cabret confronted Alain with a piece of evidence that nobody had expected. They had found Stefan's fingerprints on photographs of Claude Pompidou, and those same photos had been found in Alain's personal safe. "We know you were involved in the blackmail," Cabret told Alain. "We know you knew about the photos. The only question is whether you killed Stefan to protect yourself or whether you killed him to protect someone else." For the first time in 24 hours of questioning, Alain's composure cracked. "You don't understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stefan wasn't just my employee, he was my friend. Why would I kill someone I cared about?" "Because he was about to destroy you," Cabret replied. "Because he had photos of you too, didn't he? Photos that would ruin your career." The room fell silent. Everyone present, the detectives, the stenographer, even the guard at the door, knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. France's most famous actor, the man whose face was on movie posters across the world, was breaking down. What Alain said next would haunt him for the rest of his life. "If you think I killed Stefan to protect my reputation," he said slowly, "then you understand nothing about who I am. I've never been ashamed of anything I've done in my life. Stefan knew that. He knew I didn't care what photos he had of me." "Then why is he dead?" Cabret pressed. Alain looked up, and for a moment his mask of composure completely disappeared. The man sitting in that interrogation room wasn't the suave movie star the world knew. He was tired, frightened, and genuinely grief-stricken. Because, Alain said, his voice breaking, he thought he was untouchable. He thought his friendship with me would protect him. I should have warned him. I should have told him that there are some people you don't blackmail, no matter how much money they offer you. What people? Cabret asked. Alain closed his eyes. People who kill presidents' wives' lovers to protect elections. The implication was clear. Alain believed that Stéphane had been killed not by criminals, but by political operatives working to protect Georges Pompidou's presidential campaign. But when Cabret pressed Alain for specifics, names, dates, evidence, Alain shut down completely. For the remaining 11 hours of interrogation, he said virtually nothing. On January 11, 1969, after 35 hours of questioning, Alain Delon was released without charges. The evidence against him was entirely circumstantial, and despite the intense pressure of the interrogation, he had never confessed to anything criminal. But something had changed during those 35 hours. The man who walked out of that police station was different from the man who had walked in. People who knew Alain said he was never quite the same after the interrogation. He became more paranoid, more suspicious of the people around him. He stopped hosting parties at his house. He distanced himself from François Marc-Antony and other criminal associates. Most tellingly, he never again hired a personal bodyguard.
The case against François Marc-Antony eventually fell apart. The key piece of evidence against him was a mattress that police claimed he had purchased months before Stéphane's death, the same type of mattress cover that Stéphane's body had been wrapped in. But Marc-Antony's lawyers proved that the mattress could have been bought by anyone and that the holes in the cover could have been made by anyone with access to the right tools. In 1974, all charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. Stéphane Markovich's murder remains officially unsolved to this day. But the impact of the case extended far beyond the criminal investigation. The scandal severely damaged Georges Pompidou's presidential campaign. Even though he eventually won the 1969 election, the allegations about his wife's photographs haunted his presidency until his death in 1974. The case also changed how French police conducted interrogations. The intense pressure applied to Alain Delon was later cited as an example of why suspects needed stronger legal protections. New laws were passed requiring lawyers to be present during extended questioning and limiting the number of hours police could detain someone without filing formal charges. For Alain Delon personally, the case marked the end of his association with the criminal underworld that had fascinated him since his youth. He realized that the sense of honor and loyalty he admired in men like François Marc-Antony was an illusion. When real danger arose, those men would sacrifice anyone to save themselves. In later interviews, Alain rarely spoke about the Stéphane Markovich case in detail. But when pressed, he would say that those 35 hours in the interrogation room taught him more about human nature than all his years as an actor. The experience fundamentally changed his approach to his career and personal life. Before the interrogation, Alain had been fearless about his public image, often making provocative statements and associating with controversial figures. After 1969, he became much more careful about his public persona. "I learned that people will believe anything about you if it fits their idea of who you are," he said in a 1995 interview. "The police wanted me to be guilty because I looked like someone who could commit murder. The press wanted me to be guilty because it would sell newspapers. Even some of my friends wanted me to be guilty because it would make their lives more interesting." The interrogation also revealed the sophisticated techniques French police used in high-profile cases.
Detective Inspector Cabret later wrote about the methods employed during those 35 hours, describing them as psychological archaeology, digging layer by layer through a suspect's defenses until the truth emerged. The interrogation room itself became legendary within French law enforcement. Located in the basement of the Quai des Orfèvres police headquarters, it was a windowless space with stark white walls, a single table, and recording equipment that captured every word. Multiple detectives would take shifts, ensuring that pressure never let up and that fresh minds were constantly analyzing responses for inconsistencies. On hour 18 of the interrogation, police brought in a surprise witness, a former employee of Stéphane's, who claimed to have seen Alain and Stéphane arguing violently just days before the murder. The testimony shook Alain visibly. For the first time since the questioning began, Alain asked for water and spent several minutes composing himself before responding. Stéphane was always dramatic, he said. He threatened everyone about everything. It was how he negotiated. But he never threatened me with anything I cared about because he knew I didn't care about my reputation the way other people did. What made this response so significant was that it was the first time Alain had acknowledged any conflict with Stéphane. Up until that moment, he had portrayed their relationship as entirely harmonious.
But the truth, he continued, is always more complicated than what people want to believe. The political ramifications of the case extended far beyond France. Foreign intelligence services had been monitoring the situation closely, particularly because of the implications for NATO security. If Georges Pompidou could be compromised by blackmail photos, what other secrets might be vulnerable? American CIA files, declassified in the 1990s, revealed that the agency had considered intervening in the investigation to protect Western alliance interests. They were particularly concerned about the possibility that Soviet agents might have been involved in Stéphane's blackmail operations. British intelligence also took an interest, especially given Alain's international celebrity status. MI6 was worried that the scandal might damage Britain's cultural influence in Europe, as many of the films being shot in France at the time involved British-French co-productions. The truth about who killed Stéphane Markovitch died with the men who ordered it. But the case remains a fascinating glimpse into a world where crime, politics, and celebrity intersected in the most dangerous possible way. Today, more than 50 years later, the Stéphane Markovitch case is still studied by criminologists and political scientists. It's seen as a perfect example of how a single murder can expose the hidden connections between organized crime, political power, and celebrity culture. And at the center of it all was Alain Delon, a man who went from being France's most beloved movie star to its most notorious murder suspect, and who emerged from 35 hours of interrogation with his freedom intact, but his innocence forever lost. The case reminds us that fame and beauty can't protect you from the consequences of the company you keep, and that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones other people want to keep on your behalf. If this story fascinated you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this video with anyone who loves true crime mysteries and unsolved cases. And tell us in the comments, do you think Alain Delon knew more than he was telling? The truth may be lost to history, but the mystery lives on.